There have been conflicts associated with the Menhaden fishery since there has been a Menhaden fishery.
The forage fish, the small fish, the bottom of the food chain, they're absolutely essential.
I guess the sport fishing industry got me into Menhaden because there's always somebody going shark fishing that wanted a cooler full of bunker.
Bottom line is bunker is a bait fish, and when there's high levels of bait fish, there are species to catch.
Right now, we got it good. These whales are here to feed on these fish.
And this is a species of fish that was subject to intense fishing pressure for well over a century. There's no question that that affected the abundance of Menhaden on the East Coast. Menhaden fishing has been very important on Long Island since at least the American Revolution. This is a naturally very abundant fish here in New York seasonally from April through the end of October, and attracted the attention initially of colonial farmers to fertilize their fields. The fishery initially was a beach seine fishery. As the 19th century progressed, however, the focus of the fishery and what they were trying to get out of it changed, particularly with the onset of the Civil War. As the U.S. economy industrialized, there's a tremendous need for oil, and Menhaden is about the oiliest fish in the sea. What this meant was that they would no longer bring a fish ashore to throw them onto their fields. There developed a series of small factories where the fish were cooked, the oil extracted, and then what remained was used as fertilizer. And eventually these small potworks, many of them developed into very sophisticated factories. As the fishery became more intense, the geographic range and the movements of the fish begin to be affected. So in 1880, 50% of the fish caught in the Atlantic Menhaden fishery were caught in New England. By 1900, that percentage had dropped into the 20s. There's pretty clear evidence that by the early 1960s, the fish were being harvested at a size and at a rate that was simply unsustainable.
Well, my grandfather, he operated a fish trap company before World War I. Fish traps back then were very successful. They used to catch tremendous numbers of all the species you would expect, things like weakfish and bluefish and herring and a lot of bait fish for the lobstermen and things like that. We also caught enormous numbers of tuna. The tuna came that close to the beach because there were forage fish in tremendous numbers close to the beach back then. And today the bunker might be the most important fish just for the simple reason it's a great filter feeder. We put way too much nutrients in the bay, so we're really lucky when something like a Menhaden can come in and consume some of the phytoplankton and plankton that have taken up that nitrogen. Taking all the forage fish really reduced the ability of our environment to produce not only the larger fish, but the whales and the seabirds and everything else that feeds on them. A few years ago, when they put some restrictions on the commercial fishery for bunker, we were catching striped bass in Great South Bay in the fall. We had more bunker in the bay than we'd had for a long time.
Striped bass has a huge impact on our business because it's reachable by the average boater. I think Suffolk County has the highest number of boats registered in the state of New York. When fishing's good, people use their boats, and we're in a service business. Boats that get used do break, that's how we make our living. Those schools of bunker bring in tremendous amount of bass. And it's not just bass. Look at the whales. They're inshore, they're close. It was amazing to watch last year. Whales chasing bunker up into New York Harbor.
We're about 3 miles from New York City right now, in the western New York Bight, and since 2013, whales are here. The reason why these whales are here are not for the sights of that city right there, which is beautiful, don't get me wrong. It's for the fish that they eat, and that's the only reason. and we need to protect them. We want it to be managed, making sure that our voices are heard and not over-harvest them. It's not just for whale watching. Everything eats menhaden. Everything in this ocean around here is based on that. And if you take it away, everything else goes. The bass get skinny. The blues, they're ravenous. These whales, they would never come by. We gotta make sure that we protect these forage fish so everything in this ocean gets their share. I get it, we need some. There's businesses based on this.
You're looking at the Peconic River. This is one of the main ground zeros for this fishery. When the fish are running, this river will be paved with fish straight across, and there'll be a lot of fishermen flowing through here. Our fish are all for the bait industry, mostly for the crabbers up west and the sport fishing industry. And then all the surplus goes to Maine. Maine has a severe bait shortage. I guess it was around 2012 when the management finally was enacted, and it made a huge difference. It was insane. The schools would come in and just invade this whole system from here to Montauk. And then it was that point we kind of had to step up and start harvesting these fish, because every so often they'll get jammed up into places like the heads of the Peconic River or the Shinnecock Canal, and you'll lose 10 million pounds of fish overnight just because they deplete the oxygen so rapidly. It's a quota issue. I think we can solve this with 1% or so of this quota for New York State. I think these larger stocks are great for a small fishery like we're participating in, because we need giant schools in order to be able to get a little bit of them close to a shore where we could actually reach them. And we can find a responsible number that we're allowed to harvest without affecting any other part of the ecosystem. We're not going to dent this population at 6,000 or even 10,000 pounds a day. And we don't really want to catch millions of pounds. We just want to be able to go at a steady pace throughout the year and be able to go catch fish when the fish are here.
We live on an island. We're surrounded by water. We want to see the bunker and the fishing stay strong.
This is what they call a keystone species of our marine environment here in New York.
More menhaden, more whales.
More striped bass, more bluefish. You know, how much more can you ask of a fish?
It's really important that you get out and let your voice be heard about this. Everything depends on it.